Do people even do these anymore? Does anybody just sit down in front of a camera and make a response video? Because I don't believe I've seen that in a long time. Usually when people respond to a video, they'll do it over stream, but I don't have an audience, so I'm not going to stream. I would just be talking to nobody. So instead, I'm going to bring back the old-fashioned video response, because there's this guy who's on my nerves right now. His name is Droopy. Weird name. He made this video called Doug Walker's The Review Must Go On Sucks Too. I like how he added the 2 in there at the end, because this isn't the first time somebody's claimed that something by Doug Walker sucks. And in fact, this video is only one installment in a very long series of a bunch of popular YouTubers all bandwagoning on the Doug Walker hate train. It seems like nobody can get enough of hating Doug Walker these days. Quentin Reviews, I Hate Everything, Anthony Fantano, Quentin Reviews, Ralph the Movie Maker, Lindsay Ellis, Quentin Reviews, Folding Ideas, Quentin Review. Doug Walker sucks. Doug Walker's the worst filmmaker of all time. Doug Walker's a horrible, terrible person. Nostalgia Critic was never any good. Don't you tell me that Nostalgia Critic was never any good, because that is what we call a lie. And I am no defender of the modern Nostalgia Critic videos. I think they are terrible. I don't know what he thinks he's doing with them, but it's not working, for me at least. Remember back in 2012, he did that show Demo Reel that everyone hated? Well, it's basically like he brought the Nostalgia Critic back, but then he just inserted Demo Reel into the Nostalgia Critic and made it worse. And he no longer does the character anymore. Like, there is a canonical explanation for why the Nostalgia Critic character is a different person now, and that actually has to do with the subject of this video. But I still think it's weird that, you know, he brings back this character everyone liked, but he strips away all the personality from this character so that he's no longer angry, he's no longer funny, he's no longer constantly making fun of the movies that he criticizes. Instead, it's like he cares way too much about the filmmaker. It ruins the whole thing. But this guy, Droopy the dog here, has 665 subscribers, so basically nothing. And his video, though, has 67,681 views. So that, I would say, is a runaway success. And it just so happens that some successes are good successes and other successes are bad successes. And this is one of the bad successes, because this video is terrible. But you're only going to believe me when I show you the proof. Oh, and if you don't know anything about the Nostalgia Critic, this video might not make any sense. I don't know. I'm probably going to explain some of the background as I go. He'll probably explain some of the background, so you'll probably be able to catch up from there. But I'm just going to react to it now.
In the past few months, I've seen a lot of Nostalgia Critic critiques posted on this very website, mostly lambasting him for his quality of content, and rightly so. A lot of the focus seems to be on his movie To Boldly Flee, which I can safely say is one of the worst movies I have ever seen.
No argument there. To Boldly Flee is one of the worst movies of all time, although I think if I were to argue a little bit with this, To Boldly Flee, it doesn't exactly qualify as a movie. At least that's not how I ever saw it. I mean, when it came out, it was not released as a full-length feature film. It was released as a series of installments. You were only meant to watch 15 to 25 minutes of it at a time every day. So it's more like a limited run series than a movie. Although it doesn't really change anything, because if you watch a show, you're pretty much going to watch a bunch of it all at once, because that's how things are done these days. And so if you watch To Boldly Flee all at once, you're pretty much watching it like it's a movie. And as a movie, it's terrible. Even just in 20-minute bursts, it's terrible, but if you're watching it like its entire 3.5-hour runtime all at once, it's one of the worst experiences you can ever have. I pity the people who've sat through the entirety of To Boldly Flee. I've never done it. I think I saw the first episode and I hated it and I didn't watch any of the rest, but man, it is like, I've seen clips. I've seen Quentin Reviews' review where he got all like, he had an identity crisis over that movie for some reason, because I guess he was a big Doug Walker fan when he was a kid, and he's like, oh no, I can't handle the fact that Doug Walker is a bad filmmaker. I don't really get what his whole deal was about. But anyway, yeah, I saw Quentin Review's video about To Boldly Flee, and I've seen enough, man. I've seen enough.
Of course, with his flagship show and main source of income ending, Doug needed something else to bring people to the site, and also something that would cement himself as an artist who was much more than a guy who reviewed movies from his childhood. Enter Demo Reel. If you've never seen or heard Demo Reel, good for you. I'm happy for you. Really, I am. Your life is that much better than mine for not knowing what this disaster of a show is.
Also agreed. Demo Reel was terrible. The only episode that was kind of okay was the Lost in Translation episode, because in that one the premise kind of made sense. The thing that really makes the show the worst, in my opinion, is that the premise was terrible. The premise is that this guy played by Doug Walker, Donnie Dupre, is a terrible filmmaker who remakes movies intending to make them better, but ends up making them worse. Which, alright, whatever, it's kind of lame. But what makes it bad is that Donnie Dupre makes these films that are very self-referentially funny, well, supposed to be funny, although I can't even tell if they're supposed to be funny. It's like he's trying to make a parody of the movie, but also make an actual movie at the same time. I don't really understand what he was going for here. And I don't understand if these Demo Reel movie parodies are supposed to be funny, or if the joke is that they're not funny because Donnie Dupre is a bad writer. The only one I liked, as I said, was the Lost in Translation episode, and that was because instead of having the premise be Donnie Dupre is making a bad remake of a film, instead he goes to this anime convention with the intention of making a remake of Lost in Translation, but then the plot of Lost in Translation ends up happening to him in the process. That is what Demo Reel should have been about. That was a great premise, and he probably could have done something like that in every episode, but as it was, it didn't work at all. And the show is just really unfunny.
Demo Reel is full of awful jokes, awful directing, awful writing, and especially awful satire. Every joke is just a reference to a different, better film that you would much rather be watching, with maybe a word just changed from an actual line from those better movies.
What are we gonna do?
The only thing we can do.
Who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters.
Oh, that's so bad.
Who are you?
Yeah, Demo Reel is pure cringe. Like, it hurts to watch. A lot of the modern Nostalgia Critic episodes are like that too. That's why I can't stand that show anymore.
Demo Reel was originally intended to be the hot new show for Channel Awesome, the show that was supposed to be the reason people flocked to the site and then checked out the other producers, much like the original NC did. It wasn't. Nobody watched Demo Reel. Nobody liked Demo Reel. It was 100% failure, and Channel Awesome began to hurt because of it.
That is true. People did not like Demo Reel, and in fact, if you look at the view count on the current uploads of Demo Reel on Channel Awesome's YouTube channel, they have like 14,000 views. So yeah, nobody watched this show. Nobody liked it. It was terrible.
Something had to be done. The site could not and would not go on like this. And thus, behind the scenes, the decision to bring back the Nostalgia Critic was made. But in order to spice things up and hype up and hopefully bring back fans, the decision was also made not to announce the Nostalgia Critic coming back in a short video or statement, or just bring him back unceremoniously. No, that wasn't enough for a character as lauded and beloved. He thinks he's beloved.
He was beloved. Do you not remember? Were you not around? Do you not remember the many calls that Doug had to revive the Nostalgia Critic once he killed it off? Do you not remember all the disappointment in the air? It's like, you're like, when did you start watching the Nostalgia Critic? Because this is just not true. He was beloved. It's not like Doug was always this dude who nobody liked. No, he made great videos and people loved them, and they were sad to see him stop.
As the Nostalgia Critic, he needed more, and more he gave himself in a 32-minute long return special entitled The Review Must Go On. Yes, to bring back the Nostalgia Critic, an internet character who reviews movies from his childhood with a voice that sounds like a hyena with its balls stepped on.
What's with this idiot and numbers? What, first how many people die, now how many kids he has? I mean, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Doug Walker and Company made a 32-minute return special that acts as both a sequel to To Boldly Flee and as a finale for demo reel. Herein lies the first major issue I have with the special, is that it tries to do too much while also doing absolutely nothing.
I've seen this video before. He never explains why he thinks The Review Must Go On did nothing. That was just a line that he threw in there, and it meant nothing, and he never elaborated on it, because The Review Must Go On means a lot to the Nostalgia Critic character, to Demo Reel, to Doug, to all three of them. Doug plays 3 characters in this. I don't know, at the time, to people who hated Demo Reel and loved the Nostalgia Critic, seeing Demo Reel end and get tied in with the Nostalgia Critic in this satisfying way, yeah, it did mean a lot.
While also feeding into Doug's ego at the same time.
He has this narrative throughout the whole video that somehow The Review Must Go On is this huge ego trip for Doug, but it seems like he just doesn't understand it because he's never able to accurately explain how Doug's sort of portrayal of the hype around the Nostalgia Critic is inaccurate at all. Because it's not inaccurate, because there was a lot of hype around the Nostalgia Critic, because if you were there, you would remember that.
Doug has to decide if he's going to bring back the Nostalgia Critic or not and end Demo Reel. He plays around in both the world of Demo Reel, having weird shit happen to his character Donnie, and in Doug's own world, where he has visions of the NC all around his ugly-ass house. Seriously, look at the goddamn walls. I fucking hate his house.
Yeah, his walls were always very garishly painted. I always thought that was weird. He had like one really bright red, dark, bright red room, and then he had one that was like the same thing but in blue.
To its benefit, and it pains me to say this, The Review Must Go On does know what it is and what it's trying to achieve, and it sets itself up to achieve its goals quite nicely, having clear differences and purposes of its 2 worlds, that of Demo Reel and that of Doug's real world. The only issue with this is that what it's trying to achieve is making Doug Walker's ego as big as possible, as cringy as possible, something that I noticed when I rewatched the special. It acts like you're a big fan of Doug's work and like you've seen everything he's ever done.
Yeah, because the people who were watching this were big fans of his work, and many of them had seen everything that he'd ever done, including me. Who do you think this video was made for? It wasn't made for you, it was made for us.
It's okay to assume your fans have followed your work and enjoyed all of it. What isn't okay is acting like what you've made is God's gift to earth that everyone in the world has seen or should see.
He didn't do that. At what point in The Review Must Go On does he say, what I made is God's gift to earth that everyone must see? No, he didn't do that. You're lying.
Multiple references are made in the beginning to events and characters of Demo Reel that just make you want to reach out to Doug, slap him in the face, and say, no one watched Demo Reel.
You never heard of a woman named Rebecca Stone who did a one-woman Titanic, beat a turkey to death, and wears a shirt that says Malkovich equals balls?
I don't understand this criticism. This is taking place in the Demo Reel universe. This is Donnie Dupre, the main character of Demo Reel. Why wouldn't he be talking about things from Demo Reel? It's not like he relies on you having knowledge of Demo Reel in order to understand this video. This makes perfect sense. He's just calling back to it because that's what the character Donnie would do in this situation realistically.
There are multiple references to Nostalgia Critic videos, even in the Demo Reel section, and constant highlight reels of the Nostalgia Critic that are meant to make you feel, nostalgic for Doug's previous work, but in reality only serve to make you go, wow, Doug is a cool guy. I wish I were Doug. Let's talk about Doug's ego and only his ego for just a little bit.
What kind of a criticism was that? Was that sarcastic? This guy seems to think that having callbacks to the show that you are bringing back, that this is supposed to be the grand announcement of, is a bad thing because it means you have an ego.
One of the major parts that only exacerbates the issue of Doug's inflated ego throughout the short film are the constant calls throughout the special for the Nostalgia Critic to come back.
Doug doesn't have an inflated ego in this short film. He's just making that up. This was a narrative that he came into this review with, instead of letting the source material actually guide how he thinks. He basically had it in his head that Doug is this dude with a big ego who I hate, and so he made this video in order to prove that, instead of actually just watching The Review Must Go On and coming to an objective conclusion on it.
And when I say constant, I mean insistently insane, constant calls for the Nostalgia Critic to come back.
It's what the video is about. He's making a video about bringing back the Nostalgia Critic and about his thought process in doing that. So why wouldn't there be a bunch of calls from a bunch of people to bring back the Nostalgia Critic? Like, by the way, there were in real life from fans who really wanted to see the Nostalgia Critic return, like me.
Doug hears voices telling him to come back.
Come back.
His friends start slipping up and saying things that sound like they want him to bring the critic back.
First things first, all our hopes rest on the Nostalgia Critic. People will love that.
What did you say?
I said all our hopes rest on nostalgia. Critics love that.
That was a clever bit. That was like a glitch in the Matrix, because remember, the demo reel world doesn't exist. It's made up out of the plot hole. And so Malcolm, whatever his character's name in the show was, I can't even remember, Tacoma Narrows, that was it. Tacoma Narrows accidentally saying the Nostalgia Critic instead of Nostalgia. Critics love that. I thought that was a great bit. Kind of reminds me of in the what's his name, the Jeremy Irons Lolita, when Quilty is talking to him and he's saying that Lolita is his daughter, and he says, "You lie, she's not." And then Humbert, is that his name? Humbert? He looks around, he's like, "Wait, what'd you say?" And Quilty says, "I said July was hot."
Where the devil did you get her?
I beg your pardon?
I said the weather's getting better.
Doug even envisions the Nostalgia Critic as a real person in and outside the computer who is clamoring to bring back himself. Doug acts as if his absence is some sort of slight to the entire film world, like something was missing when he left his role as the Nostalgia Critic.
No, he doesn't. Proof? Evidence? No, it's just an assertion. He believes that Doug thinks his absence is some sort of slight to the film world with absolutely no evidence or justification. All he shows is a bunch of instances in this video, which is about the Nostalgia Critic coming back, where the Nostalgia Critic is being beckoned to come back and he's being beckoned to bring the Nostalgia Critic back. That's all he shows. None of this means that Doug thinks that his absence is some sort of slight to the film world, especially because Doug wasn't even gone. He was making demo reel. He should have been proud of that, and he was, you know?
But in reality, he was a guy who reviewed old movies who didn't want to review movies anymore. It's not that deep, Doug. God.
He wasn't saying it was deep. Where are you getting this from? God. Maybe this guy is being fooled by how pretentious the direction and the whole concept behind this is, because it's like some sort of a psychological drama with a bunch of cliches. I think that was intentional. I don't think Doug was trying to do anything bizarre or innovative with this. I think he was trying to use a bunch of cliches and tropes in these psychological dramas that people are familiar with as kind of a fun way to bring the Nostalgia Critic back and to explain why he's alive, because remember, Nostalgia Critic died in the plot hole. If you want to bring him back, you got to come up with a canonical reason for it. So this was his attempt to do that, and I thought it worked pretty well. I thought it was pretty fun, pretty funny, pretty interesting, actually.
Something that was lost on me when I was younger, but that now seems really apparent as I've grown older, is the role the producers who cameo in this play in Doug furthering his ego. Linkara, Todd in the Shadows, Brad Jones, aka Cinema Snob, and Lindsay Ellis all show up to consult and listen to Doug pontificate about whether he should bring back his most lucrative IP or not. For this section, I'm really only going to be talking about Linkara and Lindsay Ellis' moments, though, as they're the only ones who have somewhat meaningful conversations with Doug about the Nostalgia Critic, as Todd's appearance is mostly paid for, albeit shitty, laughs, and Brad Jones is a scab.
Brad Jones is not a scab. Brad Jones is not a scab. Maybe Just maybe Brad Jones stayed on Channel Awesome because he didn't personally have any grievances with them. I don't know, just a thought.
Lincaro's encounter with Doug starts off fine enough. They talk about whether or not Doug should bring back the Nostalgia Critic, the different routes he can go down, etc. But then Lincaro says something crucial that just really shows off how important Doug thinks the Nostalgia Critic is.
Well, that's why it's your choice. Bottom line, if you feel there's still potential and you can keep it going for a long time, bring him back. But if you think you only have enough for once in a while, just keep it once in a while and go out on top.
Go out on top? What is there to go out on exactly?
The show that everybody loved? What do you mean, what is there to go out on? Do you even remember this? Were you around?
Doug's reviews have essentially stayed the same over the years, even with the demo-realized nature of Nostalgia Critic 2.0.
Wrong! Nostalgia Critic reviews have not remained the same, as evidenced by the fact that I love the old videos and I hate the new ones. He's a completely different character. He doesn't even do, like, his main thing. Like, he used to be this man-child who would make... Like, he would take movies way too seriously, movies that were clearly made for kids that he remembered from when he was a kid. He would take them way too seriously and pretend like they were supposed to be real movies, and then he would get mad at them, and it was hilarious.
I'm Tom.
I'm Jerry.
What the hell? Did they just talk? Did Tom and Jerry, one of the most famous silent duos of all time, just speak to each other?
No. It's gotta be a mistake. I gotta be hearing things. I'm gonna just go ahead and eat my customary 3-pound watermelon and drink my traditional pitcher of sangria both at the same time while I confirm how wrong I was about this ridiculous misunderstanding.
What do you think I am, a dummy?
You said it.
Holy crap! They talked! They actually talked! The apocalypse has finally begun, pigs are learning how to fly, Satan is skating his way to work, and I'm pretty sure that I just became a monkey's uncle. Unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. The one rule that you never break, and they broke it in the first 10 minutes. I mean, isn't that like one of the 10 Commandments or something? Thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Tom and Jerry don't talk. But wait, it gets worse. Not only can they talk, but they can also sing.
We two, we're friends to the end. Ain't we, my friend? You'll never find two other guys compatible in steak and fries.
But wait, it gets worse. Not only do they like to sing about how they don't like chasing each other and how they enjoy being friends.
The greatest gift in life's a friend. He's a daily dividend. Be like us and start a trend. We're friends to the end.
Hey, you guys are the greatest! I love it!
You are terrific.
My God.
But now it seems like the Nostalgia Critic is trying to be an actual critic, and he's terrible because he's not entertaining, and he isn't really providing any interesting analysis, so there's pretty much no reason to watch him anymore. And even before the whole 2.0 thing, and the demo realization of Nostalgia Critic, even before all that, Nostalgia Critic definitely evolved a lot in those first 5 years. Like, the first episode of Nostalgia Critic was basically a bum review, and he kept trying to come up with a bunch of gimmicks for how to make the show more interesting and keep it fresh. He did one that was entirely in rhyme one time. He did one that was a musical episode. He did one where he was doing a Hunter S. Thompson impression the whole time. He did a lot of different things, so why are you saying that Nostalgia Critic reviews haven't changed? Of course they've changed.
As astounding as this line is to me, the interaction between Lindsay Ellis, who I adore, and Doug...
Of course he loves Lindsay Ellis, dude. Everyone who hates the Nostalgia Critic also loves Lindsay Ellis. Or should I call her the Nostalgia Chick? I said it. I said the evil word. I just dead-named Lindsay Ellis. And I don't even feel bad about it, because you know what? There is nothing to be ashamed of about being the Nostalgia Chick. Being the Nostalgia Chick was awesome. She should be proud of her accomplishments in that area. It's only the fact that Lindsay is so butthurt and bitter over her whole experience that makes people sympathize with her so much. For the past 10 years, Lindsay Ellis has been making a pretty good living off of making videos on the internet. And you know who gave her that opportunity? Doug Walker. That's not to say that Lindsay Ellis couldn't have done it on her own. I'm only saying that she is where she is today because the Walker brothers sponsored her. So why am I supposed to feel bad for her? Why am I supposed to hate Doug now? I know there was a bunch of stuff that she wrote during the whole change the channel thing, as well as a bunch of other people. But personally, I've never really heard anything about Doug specifically that makes me think that he is anything less than a decent person. I say decent, not great. Decent. You can have flaws and still be decent. And I feel the same way about Lindsay, although Lindsay just isn't as likable as Doug, and I'm sorry if you don't agree with this, but it's true. Lindsay just has this very judgmental attitude about her all the time, and I think that that's just part of the culture that she's in. A lot of people in that sort of left-wing blogosphere environment are pretty insufferable. And it's just because nobody has a sense of humor about themselves. Nobody is really able to see that the things that they're talking about kind of matter, but ultimately nothing really matters. They take themselves way too seriously. They're really wound up and they feel the need to be really intense about everything they believe. I just don't like that whole attitude, and it makes me not really like Lindsay all that much, although I do think that she's a great content creator, and I especially love her old Nostalgia Chick stuff. I know it ain't a popular opinion. You're supposed to like her new stuff more. I like her new stuff, I just don't like it as much. Certainly like it more than the new Nostalgia Critic, though, so if anything, the edge goes to Lindsay.
This line is, to me, the interaction between Lindsay Ellis, who I adore, and Doug, who I really hate, is even worse, and has underlying implications that honestly make me wonder about the way Doug viewed his fellow producers when they were still on the site. The whole tone and context of this conversation, which really only takes a minute or two in the runtime, but it feels like it lasts for at least 30 minutes, just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. One that gets worse and worse the more I think about it and the more I watch. This scene feels like it's made specifically to make you think that Lindsay Ellis is an angry, jealous person who doesn't want her friend to come back into the limelight. And it just feels gross because you know Lindsay Ellis doesn't care to be there, and you know Doug Walker thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread.
It's a joke. A joke. In this video, there is a running gag that Lindsay Ellis doesn't want the Nostalgia Critic to come back because she's now the queen of nostalgic reviews or whatever, and she's doing everything she can to sabotage him. None of that even remotely implies that that was the case in real life. People back then could understand the difference between reality and fantasy. Apparently you can't. Or maybe you're just choosing not to because you have this vendetta against Doug Walker because you read the Change the Channel documents 3 years ago and you were so traumatized by them. But I'm telling you, man, it's just not the case. You're just not representing things the way they were.
Exactly. You made your choice and you should stick with it. The Critic had a great run, but now it's time to branch out and do new things. I mean, do you really want to do this for the rest of your life?
Well, I don't really think it would bother me.
Of course you don't. So why don't you just stick with the plan and do what you know is right?
Yeah, you're right. I do want to try new things. Thanks a lot, Lindsay. I know a lot of people in your position would probably have an agenda, but it's good to know you always give it to me straight.
Anytime, Doug. Anytime. You know what to do.
This whole interaction is just weird to me. Like, first of all, Doug makes a shitty joke about taking a ton of tranquilizers, which sadly doesn't seem to affect him.
Are you chewing on something?
Tranquilizers. I've taken enough to kill a baby rhinoceros.
He begins asking Lindsay questions, and I have to say, it's so obvious that she doesn't want to film this that I just respect her even more. Her acting is so dry and dejected.
Yeah, she did a bad job acting her role because she didn't care. I like her all the more because of that. Alright, shows where your priorities are.
Also, Doug acts like because he left his stead as a nostalgia critic, the only person who can review nostalgic movies now is Lindsay Ellis, and that she has final say on his return.
I mean, I know it won't be entirely impartial seeing how nostalgic movies are now your domain and everybody comes to you for them, but I trust you on this, and I want your honest opinion.
If you grew up watching Nostalgia Critic and any others, there's this running idea that if somebody reviews something another producer might have already covered, it's worse than murder.
It was a joke. It was a running joke. The fact that everyone had to review things that nobody else has done, because like the whole idea was that all of these guys have huge egos and they can't stand the idea that somebody else is copying them, so they're all fighting each other. You see, back in those days, we had a thing called a sense of humor, which meant we didn't take these things super literally all the time.
Doug just makes me so uncomfortable in everything he does, and this only makes it worse. I feel like that's the recurring feeling of this return special. Uncomfortability, especially with the benefit of time and being a couple years removed from the not-so-awesome documents. There's just so many things in here that make me question the behind-the-scenes aspects. Obviously, I mentioned the cameos by the producers earlier, and all the moments where it's obvious Doug is inflating his own ego like a balloon on helium. But there's moments in this that make me genuinely wonder what the fuck happened that day on set. Like, I wonder if the cast of Demo Reel knew they were coming back for the Nostalgia Critic before shooting this episode.
Yeah, probably, because they lived in Chicago with him, and so they would be working very closely with him. They would be seeing him every day, shooting with him. So yeah, what do you think they didn't know? You think Doug was keeping it a big secret that he was going to end Demo Reel and bring back the Nostalgia Critic? No, he was probably talking it out with them and getting them on board with Nostalgia Critic 2.0, which, by the way, they showed up in the first episode of. This seems to be one of those guys who thinks that Doug was personally responsible for everything that happened with Channel Awesome. He wasn't running Channel Awesome. That was Mike Michaud. Mike Michaud was personally responsible for all the communication difficulties. Now, did Doug make it any better? No. Doug wasn't really upholding his end of the deal, I don't think. He wasn't acting as face of the company and using that influence to make things better. He just kind of ignored it. But does that mean that Doug is the kind of person who's not going to tell the people he works closely with, which, by the way, the other Channel Austin producers didn't. They lived all around the world because that's how their situation was set up back then. But these people who are all working with him in Chicago, you think he's not going to tell them about this stuff? This is lunacy. This doesn't make any sense. If you had thought about this for like 5 minutes, you wouldn't have made this stupid video.
Seeing as the producers who participated and to boldly flee didn't receive scripts until extremely close to the shoot date, which meant they didn't know the Nostalgia Critic was being written off until shooting, which meant that they didn't know whether they still had a job or not prior to shooting. I think it's something to ponder over. I would not put it past Doug to announce that he's bringing his old show back, which was a largely one-person affair, and not tell his cast whether he was bringing them back or not.
It's so stupid, dude. The producers who were involved in To Boldly Flee were not living in Chicago with him. They wouldn't have been interacting with him on a daily basis. It just would have slipped his mind to tell them, or maybe he was just trying to keep it a secret and make sure it didn't leak out to the broader public, and so he didn't reach out to every producer and tell them.
Now, it might seem like I'm pro new cast, and all I can say is, I'm not. For a variety of different reasons, I'm not a fan of the new cast.
He shows this Malcolm Ray tweet where Malcolm has nothing but kind words to say about Doug and Rob, and if you read this, he says, "It's also incredible, honestly. You can even look at my making of NC videos to see how things really go down in production. Proof on video, but real talk, I don't know how things were prior to my hiring years ago, but the way things are indicate that improvement or change has happened, and it only continues to get better. My hope is that amends can be made so we can all move forward peacefully. Much love to everyone." So Malcolm is saying nothing wrong here. He's not discounting the experiences of anyone who feels like they were slighted by Channel Awesome or has a grievance with Doug Walker. He's not denying any of that. He's only sharing his personal experience that he personally never had any issues with Doug and is having a blast working with him, and everyone there in the team works really well together and everything's going good. What's wrong with this? The fact that he isn't getting on the hate train for Doug Walker, the fact that he isn't giving up his job for a bunch of idiotic strangers on the internet like you who are gonna... People like you who are gonna tell him he has to give up what appears to be kind of a dream job for him, or, I don't know, jeopardize his relationship with his boss just to appease some morons who have sour grapes over, oh, they didn't get enough money or whatever. Obviously, I'm being very flippant and dismissive about the Change the Channel testimonies. I'm not saying that those guys didn't have a point. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done what they did. They definitely should have. It was a good thing. And I blame Mike Michaud mostly for all the problems with Channel Awesome. But I just think it's really stupid that this guy is taking this moral argument against Malcolm Ray, who didn't do anything wrong. And then Tamara Lynn Chambers here concurring with him, saying, this is how I've been feeling. Thanks for putting this out there. So Malcolm and Tamara are both in agreement that Doug is a perfectly fine person to work with. They're doing just fine with him in their Chicago working environment. And that is very different from the situation with all the producers all around the world with Mike Michaud and Channel Awesome. That was like a whole different episode in Doug's working life. And you're trying to tell these people that they're not allowed to be happy, that they're not allowed to have this good experience because it looks bad when reflected against other people's negative experiences. There is no world in which this makes sense. This is an idiotic complaint.
But the main reason I'm not a fan of the new cast being brought back to Nostalgia Critic 2.0 is that bringing back the cast essentially combines the Nostalgia Critic with demo reel, creating an amorphous hybrid of incompetence and idiocracy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I don't like about it. Now, I do think that if the writing was as good as the old writing and it done in the same style as the old writing, there would not be any problem with having extra actors. It seems like Doug kind of needed extra actors back then anyway, and he didn't really have them, so he just put Rob in a dinosaur mask or whatever. But I do think that this represents demo reel merging with the Nostalgia Critic, because it's not like he wanted to give up Nostalgia Critic forever, but he also had this idea for demo reel that he wanted to do, but people didn't like that. So he kind of did a smart move in actually merging the two of them together to create this new thing that kind of combined aspects of both things. And you know what? It worked. It doesn't work for me. I don't like it, but it worked for other people because he's still getting a lot of views, and in fact, he's more popular than he's ever been.
I shit you not. The NC and Doug, which in this are two different people, sit down at a kitchen table and discuss whether or not the Nostalgia Critic is allowed to review newer movies or not. Yes, apparently in the world of the Nostalgia Critic, you're not only not allowed to review movies somebody else has reviewed before, or even allowed to review older movies, you have to sit down and have a talk with yourself about the things you are allowed to review as well as your schedule.
Yeah, because I don't know if you're aware of this. Apparently not. Apparently you weren't around, so I don't know why you think you're an authority on this subject. But the Nostalgia Critic wasn't allowed to review modern movies. This is just a fact that everyone knew back then. His name, it's in his name, Nostalgia Critic. He reviewed stuff from the 80s and 90s when he was a kid. That was the whole point of the gimmick and the name. So yeah, him having a conversation with the Nostalgia Critic saying, hey, I can't be bound to these rules anymore. I have to expand and you have to accommodate me if you want to come back. That makes perfect sense. He's setting up, he's not just doing it in universe, he's setting up for the audience who's watching it, for people like me who are interested. He's saying, hey guys, I have more things I want to do, so Nostalgia Critic is coming back, but just don't expect it to be the same thing. It's amazing how something with so much utility like this could just be boiled down to pure egotism by this moron who doesn't know what he's talking about.
Some ground rules.
Fair enough.
Reviews every 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Maybe every other week I can do a mini review or a film editorial, but if we still want these jokes to still be fresh and funny, I need more time on them.
I'm going to pause right here because he's written a few things. Couple things to mention here. 1, Doug essentially argues with himself on how much time he gets off. Wrong. Doug didn't have any time off. What he was talking about here is the fact that he had ideas that were too big to accomplish in a single week. And so he had to have a week off in order to do those ideas. He wasn't taking time off. He was expanding what he could do with the show. And by the way, he never stuck to this idea that he was gonna do one every 2 weeks. He never did that. He did the editorials for a while, which kind of were like mini reviews that didn't really count, but they were still pretty well produced, well edited, well written. There was still a lot of work that went into those. And then after that, he just stopped doing the editorials altogether, and now he's just doing a Nostalgia Critic one every week. I don't even know how he does it. He has some big production team that really pumps them out right now. And so this is not true. He didn't get time off. And 2, you might need some more time if you want those jokes to be funny, Doug. A lot more time. All right, good point.
This all just feels like it could have happened in a 2-minute long announcement video. Maybe you could have had a short sketch or a funny joke or something.
What would have been the fun of that? Why not do the big, bold, interesting approach? What is wrong with that? You haven't demonstrated why it's wrong. All you've done is assert blindly that Doug has a big ego problem, but you haven't actually demonstrated it, so why should I believe you?
But man, acting like a movie critic, returning to critiquing movies after he said he would no longer critique movies, is deserving of an epic tale of one man's ego is obscene.
Maybe, just maybe, it's self-aware. Somehow, I don't think Doug was thinking he was making another Citizen Kane with this video. Somehow, I think that this was basically just an update video that he decided to make really pretentious and weird because it would have made it more interesting and fun and given the audience something to bite onto a bit more. And I thank him for that because I remember when this video came out and I loved it. It clearly reached its intended audience. Maybe you just weren't its intended audience.
He's basically combining Demo Reel, the show he'd much rather be wasting our time with the Nostalgia Critic, the show that he's been wasting our time with for 7 years.
Wasting our time with for 7 years. Okay, no, it was like 5 years. It was between 2005 and 2012. And no, he wasn't wasting our time with it. We were enjoying it because he was one of the best creators on the platform at that time. In fact, he wasn't even on the platform. He was on his own platform for most of that time because YouTube wasn't good enough for him. That is how boss he was. He managed to make his own platform. How many people can do that these days? Nobody.
I always remembered the Alice in Wonderland episode as being the episode that the demo realization of the Nostalgia Critic began with. But man, rewatching these episodes made me realize that it started even earlier than that. Doug has been combining aspects of these shows together for years now, which means he's been making shitty fan films that espouse nonsensical critiques of films for almost a third of my life.
It really started as soon as the Odd Life of Timothy Green video came out, because that was the first one that had Malcolm and Rachel in it. And that was the first one he did after Demo Reel. It didn't really, there wasn't any point where he slowly started integrating more and more. Maybe he did a little bit, but it was pretty much, I mean, Nostalgia Critic, when it came back, was basically like the Nostalgia Critic mixed with Demo Reel. It's been like that ever since then. I mean, really, it was a slow descent from when he came back. I mean, everyone could see the writing on the wall at that time. Now, I do think the videos that he was making when he came back were pretty good at first. I did like the Odd Life of Timothy Green review. I liked the Pearl Harbor review. I thought he was doing pretty good stuff at that time. But, you know, slowly he started integrating more of that demo reel stuff into it. And then he did the Jurassic World one, which was a clipless review. And man, the clipless ones are like the worst. They're impossible to watch.
Almost a third of my life. And I remember and watched most of it. Existence is pain.
So you remember and watched most of it. So you were a Nostalgia Critic fan at one point. I wonder why your memory has gone so shoddy.
First of all, the cinematography in this is just fucking annoying. The classic, look up at Doug like he's God shots are all here, as expected, and there's all these little movements that seem to serve no purpose, and just the sheer wistful nature of them make me want to throw the camera on the ground and beat this shit like that scene from Office Space.
Dude, it's not a movie, it's a YouTube video. I don't know if you forgot about that, and not only is it a YouTube video, it's a YouTube video from 2013. What are you even expecting? I'd like to see this guy make a movie as good as the review must must go on. I bet he couldn't do it. I bet for all this talk that Doug is a terrible cinematographer or that Rob is a terrible cinematographer. Dude, could you do any better? Because I'm not seeing it. All I'm seeing is you doing a voiceover. You're not even showing your face. You're not even making any original footage. You're just putting other people's footage together. You're basically just ripping off of other people's work right now. And you have the gall to claim that Rob is a bad cinematographer, even though he wasn't making a cinematic piece. He was making a YouTube video. And look, there's nothing wrong with remixing and re-editing and talking over other people's videos. I'm just saying it doesn't require you to risk anything by doing it. So there's no chance that somebody can come around and tell you you're a bad cinematographer. The cinematography, or rather the videography in this video, is perfectly fine. It's perfectly serviceable. There's nothing wrong with it for what it's trying to do.
Doug still really doesn't know how to light anything. There's parts of this that look almost grainy and dated, and shots that are so oversaturated in light that even a black and white filter make it hard to look at the screen.
That lighting looks fine. Look at that. That looks fine. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. It's fine.
Bringing back the plot hole in this is just really stupid to me because there's no inkling at all throughout demo reel that the plot hole is the reason why Donnie is who he is in that show, which makes it essentially a retcon of this.
Wait. But there is definitely something about Donnie Dupre that's wrong, because I don't remember demo reel very much. It's been years since I saw it, but I do remember there was a thing with Donnie Dupre not having an identity. He didn't have a birth certificate. People didn't know who he was. He just came out of nowhere like Tommy Wiseau. So there was something set up that was leading to something. It wasn't supposed to be this at first, but I think that once he had the idea of bringing the Nostalgia Critic back, he decided to tie it in with the Nostalgia Critic, and it worked pretty well through this plot hole device.
It feels like something Doug himself would criticize in a film, yet he's just casually doing it here and relying on you to have sit through his 3.5 hour long movie as well as his 6 episode failed monstrosity.
No, you don't need to see To Boldly Flee or demo reel to understand the review must go on. Maybe you should have some passing familiarity with demo reel. But I didn't see To Boldly Flee, and I knew that Nostalgia Critic went into the plot hole at the end because everyone was talking about it. So you just need to know that basic thing, and you need to know who Donnie Dupre is, and that's really all you need to know to watch this video. And basically everyone who watched this video knew all that stuff because they checked out demo reel. They didn't like it, but they checked it out, so they knew the premise.
Per usual, Doug overacts and oversqueals his voice. I'm just going to show you a compilation of his terrible acting in this because, goddamn, talking about it is going to make me a madman.
So are we doing this?
Yeah, I just need to get some coffee.
That's water.
So it is. Okay, I'm with you. A Carmen Sandiego movie? Cool, I like it. This tastes like microwave Baileys.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's not Shakespeare or anything, but what are you expecting? It's just Doug's acting. He's been doing it for a long time. He's not terrible at it. He has a pretty decent on-camera presence. Now, I happen to think his voice now is really annoying. I don't know why he talks like that now. He speaks in really upper register thing. I don't know why. But back then he wasn't really doing that, so I don't really know what the complaint is.
One last thing, after watching this episode multiple times for this review, it makes me wonder, what's going to happen when Doug actually retires? I'm not talking about retiring the show again for another new thing, because I doubt that Doug will do anything but this for the rest of his life. I'm talking more about what's going to happen when Doug is 60 or 70 years old, and he just retires from working.
Who knows if he's even going to do that? Probably, my guess is that a lot of YouTubers are just never going to retire, because why would they? They get a lot of satisfaction out of what they do, so I mean, look at rock and roll musicians. They've kept playing until they're 90 years old and in a wheelchair. So, I don't know. I don't think Doug really needs to retire. Maybe his videos are going to get really weird when he gets old. I don't know.
But ever since the Nostalgia Critic was killed off and Doug brought him back, it's kind of felt like the end has been nigh. And I think we're finally starting to see that feeling come true.
No? What? The end has been nigh? How? He's been doing nothing but growing more popular.
Probably, surprisingly, most controversially, and eye-openingly, at least the quality of his videos of all, Doug Walker released his review of The Wall. Received widespread criticism from the YouTube community, personalities, and consumers alike.
This was another terrible video. This is like his magnum opus of terrible Nostalgia Critic videos. This review was so famously bad that people who didn't even watch the Nostalgia Critic, didn't even have any knowledge of him, were being sent this video like, come see this guy's absolutely terrible parody of Pink Floyd's The Wall with Corey Taylor. And this is like a video that will live in infamy for the rest of my days. This is like one of those once-in-a-lifetime videos. And honestly, I kind of like the fact that Doug made something so hugely bad that it reflects this way on him. I think it's kind of cool, because not every video you make in life is going to be good, and a lot of them are going to be pretty bad. And so the fact that Doug is so colossally bad whenever he's bad, I mean, he's not just bad, but he like puts millions of dollars into being bad. There's something inspiring about that. I don't know why. Like, even if the video didn't work, he tried his hardest to make it a spectacular achievement, good or bad. And you're never gonna forget it. Like, I'm never gonna forget The Wall and how crazy that video was. There's a reason it got so much talk. There's a reason it got so much buzz when it came out. It's because it was huge. If you stuck around past The Wall, then you're a true Nostalgia Critic fan, because I don't know anyone who has stuck around past The Wall. Although, judging by the numbers, a lot of people have.
Look, I'm not going to act like I get a ton of views on here and that I know what it takes to get as many views as possible. My last video maybe has 60 at the time of this recording. I don't mean to sound like an archfiend here.
Dude, remember the Archfiend? I love the fact that this guy brought up the Archfiend. This guy somehow has enough memory that he remembers the Archfiend, but he doesn't remember the Nostalgia Critic being a beloved institution in our lives. I don't understand that. So it makes me think that he's just being really disingenuous. But yeah, the Archfiend... Real G's remember the Archfiend. The Archfiend was basically the first ever commentary channel.
I'm just simply pointing out the fact that even a few years ago, Nostalgia Critic videos got well over a couple million views, and in 2020, at least when I check in every now and then, they struggle to get a couple 100,000.
Yeah, you're a liar. You can't even find examples of Nostalgia Critic videos with under a couple 100,000, judging by every single one that you list here has over a couple 100,000. That one has 600,000. So yeah, you're just lying. I have checked this guy's work. He's lying. He's totally making this up. In fact, he cherry-picked those first three that he showed when he's talking about the ones that he did before The Wall and how they were so much more popular. Yeah, it turns out he just went to Nostalgia Critic, Channel Awesome, most popular videos page. So yeah, of course, he picks the most popular ones. It has 3 million views. It was such a huge success. So yeah, of course, those ones have a lot of views. They are anomalies. But most of the Nostalgia Critic videos from that time had the same amount of views that the modern ones have. And if they have a little bit more, it's just because they've been there longer and have been allowed to rack up more views over the years. These ones are still, like, every time Nostalgia Critic pumps out a new video, it gets a lot of views, a lot of traffic, over 100,000 views in a week. Usually way more after that. So this is just a narrative that is totally made up. He invented this in his own mind. He isn't getting this out of anything that I can find. No, this is just a lie. This is just a pure lie. There's nothing true about this.
And it might not be fair to do this, but I have to compare him to his contemporary, James Rolfe, aka the Angry
please.
Nerd. AVGN videos still do obscenely well, and even his random videos are videos...
Yeah, because he has like 3 times as many subscribers as Doug. I think James has over 3 million subscribers. Doug has only just over 1 million. So yeah, he gets about 3 times the amount of views on an AVGN as Doug gets on a Nostalgia Critic. But you know what? For a while, James wasn't even uploading AVGN very much, whereas Doug was doing it consistently every week. So Doug was overall probably making more money on his Nostalgia Critics than James was making on his Angry Video Game Nerd videos.
Of course, every Nostalgia Critic is sponsored at the wazoo, so plenty of companies feel as if he's popular enough to stake their name on still. But just from a mere fan's perspective, it's obvious who the more likable, more consistently successful and engaging personality/channel is.
No, dude. All right, look, I like James a lot more than Doug. I think James is more fun to watch just talking off the cuff than Doug, and I think James has a more real personality than Doug, who kind of seems a little bit weird and plastic. But that being said, you can't claim that the angry video game nerd videos that he's making now are the same as they were back in the old days. People have been talking for a long time about the angry video game nerd going downhill, and that's because he's not angry anymore. He's the exasperated video game nerd, so he's lost, like, his whole gimmick. And, like, honestly, his videos are still more watchable than the Nostalgia Critic. Like, Nostalgia Critic actively makes me cringe. I can't watch Nostalgia Critic. I can watch an AVGN episode, but you know what? They're not very memorable, they're not very entertaining, and I'm probably going to want to turn it off halfway through. That's just how it is. So I think the idea of using James as a positive example of somebody from back in the day who's still making great stuff is just not very useful.
I really don't want to be making this video.
I love it how everybody says that. Everybody who makes a video is like, I don't want to make this video. Then why are you making it? Dude, you wanted to make this video. Just admit it. That's why you turned on the microphone and started recording. You wanted to make this video because you wanted to talk about how much you hate Doug. You wanted to criticize someone else's work that they put a lot of energy into. You just really got a lot of kick out of tearing someone else apart. And you know what? I'm the same way. I got a kick out of tearing you apart. So maybe we should just all admit that we like doing this and we want to make these videos because they're fun to make.
I don't want to hate Doug. I loved his videos when I was younger. When the Not So Awesome documents came out, I didn't want the things about Doug to be true.
But then it changed your whole opinion on him and you can't look at him the same way again. I personally didn't see anything in those documents that was particularly alarming about Doug himself. I saw a lot of stuff about Mike Michaud that was very alarming, but about Doug, I didn't really see anything that was that bad. The most you could say about him was that he was neglectful of the other creators that were working with him.
And because of that, I simply cannot sit through his content anymore. I said earlier, I check in every now and then, but I do not last longer than 5 minutes the majority of the time. And if I do, it's because I'm mesmerized by the sheer lunacy of what's happening on the screen before me. Like Nostalgia, Doug and his character are deeply rooted in the past, and I'm sure for a lot of kids my age. But instead of being something worth remembering now, the Nostalgia Critic feels more and more like a memory, lost and forgotten in the past. And maybe that's where he belongs.
Yeah, and too bad for you, man, because every time I go back and watch something like Howard the Duck or his Power Rangers video or even his oldest one that I saw, the Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue video, every time I go back and watch one of those, oh man, the He-Man and She-Ra Christmas, that was hilarious. They're always funny, they're always great and entertaining. I have a great time, and I remember all of the laughs that I had when I was a kid, and they come back to me fresh, and it feels great. And, you know, I think it's sad that other fans of the Nostalgia Critic can't have that same experience. The fact that their experience of him is tainted by all of this political stuff. And I say political because I think people act like they have a moral responsibility to hate Doug now, even though nobody has a moral responsibility to hate anybody. You can like whatever you want. The only responsibility that you have is to be true to yourself and live truthfully.